you can see on the screen there, government's T-levels program has started, and it's for 16 to 19-year-olds, that key sector of the population who are part of tomorrow's future. And we've been designing a huge program, that's to say BCS, but also numerous other organizations in collaboration with the government. And they are aimed at industry placements to gain practical experience by these young people. They include one which is rolling out right now called Digital Production, Design and Development. And you can volunteer to help T-level teachers and others to gain IT industry insights via guidance, mentoring, or work placements so that they can better coordinate and teach their T-level students. Of course, this is all aimed at the T-level students, and we'll have more to say about that presently and also possibly in future sessions. But this is a tremendous opportunity for all of us, for BCS members and for others, to learn more about it. Now, there are lots of different names you can see on screen there. DFE, IFATE, ESFA, ETF, and BCS. Well, hopefully you've heard of BCS, but what on earth are all the others? Well, we will elaborate as we go through the next hour and a half or so. And firstly, we've got an overview of T-levels by Stella Pearson. Very lucky to have all of our presenters. Stella is from the DFE, Department for Education, and she's Deputy Director of T-level delivery. She will give the overview of T-levels, and this will be followed by Rebecca George, our own president, who is also a non-executive chair of the T-level Reform Program Board. She'll be talking about T-levels in government. This will be followed, Rebecca's session will be followed by qualification development for digital T-levels, and that's given by Pamela Rahman, who is the Associate Director of TE Delivery and Implementation at IFATE. Okay, I'll tell you what that one means. Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. Then rolling on with the acronyms, we have somebody from ESFA. It's Bev Moxon. She'll be talking about industry placements and employers. And she is an account manager at the Education and Skills Funding Agency, ESFA. Next, we have the Industry Insights Program and Current Digital T-Level by Marion Patterson, who is from ETF, the Education and Training Foundation. And Marion is an Employment Engagement Coordinator there. Then finally, as far as our presentations are concerned, we will have our own Richard Lester, who is the Program Director who is a program director at BCS, and he'll be talking about opportunity and benefits for you. All of this will be followed by a panel with audience Q&A. So that's you and questions from you. So please do start sending questions in. And if you can, identify which presenter you would like to have answer that. And then at 7:55 to 8 o'clock, I'll close off this whole session. So that's our program. So all I can say right now is let's go. Please join me in welcoming Stella Pearson, Deputy Director, T-Level Delivery at the DFE. Over to you, Stella.
Thank you very much, Dalim, and thank you to everyone for joining and for having me to talk to you about T-levels. So I'm hoping you can see my screen.
Press F5.
I'm hoping... Yeah, are the slides coming up? I've got a thinking circle for a second. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Probably good, Stella.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. All right, lovely. So as Dalim said, I'm Stella Pearson and I lead the team within the Department for Education who is delivering T-levels. Oh, my slides won't move on. Oh, there we go.
No, Stella, you're not full screen, but We can see the slides.
Hang on a sec. Let me see if I can sort that out. Sorry, bear with me a minute. Are they good enough to see?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, rather than me mess it all up, I better start from here. Okay, so this first slide just gives you a bit of background about T-levels. So in 2016, the government asked Lord Sainsbury to set up a panel to look at the quality of technical education and to advise ministers on some changes that could be made to the current offer. And a lot of this was led by concern from employers about students finishing their level 3, so finishing education at 18 and not really being ready for the workforce and the workplace, and employers having to do a lot of extra training of these level 3 graduates before they were actually ready to start work. And so this slide gives you a few of the high-level recommendations that the panel put forward. And part of those recommendations was to create a new set of new technical qualifications and programs called T-levels. And so I'll give you some more information about those, obviously, as we go through these slides. And then another thing that they also recommended was a radical streamlining of technical qualifications overall. So I think something that we've heard an awful lot about over the years, in addition to students not really being ready for work, is that there's so many qualifications out there that employers don't really know what they're looking for. And I think a good example is one around plumbing. I think there's something like 300 plumbing qualifications out there, all sorts of levels and specialisms, and it's quite difficult now for employers to work out which are the ones that really give students the right skills to start work. And so this panel also recommended that we really look at the quality of this huge number of qualifications and really focus in and fund those that help students move into jobs. And I'll give you a little bit more about where we are with that later on in the presentation. So the government accepted all of the recommendations from Lord Sainsbury and the skills panel and produced a plan for delivering these over the next few years. And one of their key commitments was to make sure that we delivered the first T-levels from September 2020. So this slide gives you an idea about where T-levels sit alongside other qualifications and programs that students might do from 16 to 19. And the expectation is that there will be these 3 key pathways that students will choose from. They will either be able to choose an A-level, so this is for students who want to carry on learning largely in the classroom and will prepare them again largely for higher education, so students who might want to go on to university and higher levels of study. And then on the far right hand side there's apprenticeships, so those students who are really clear on the kind of job that they want to do. They're clear that they like hands-on learning. They don't really want to spend lots more time in the classroom anymore. They really want to get out into the world of work and learn in that way. And then in the middle is T-levels. So it's still a classroom-based program. So 80% of the time is still in the classroom, learning skills and knowledge in the classroom, but there's 20% out on an industry placement, so an opportunity for students to put everything they've learned in the classroom into practice when they move out into that placement. And primarily T-levels are designed to help students move into skilled employment. So as I mentioned before, employers giving us feedback that students aren't ready to actually start when they finish at 18. The idea with T-levels is that they will have done this industry placement, and when they have completed their T-level, they will be absolutely ready to start in a job, and they'll have all the right skills and knowledge to be able to do that. But to avoid some concerns from students and parents that we've tested with over the years, there will still be an opportunity for T-level graduates to go onto other things as well. It isn't just into work. So this slide gives you a bit more information about what a T-level actually is. So it's a 2-year course that students who have just completed GCSEs can do. It's been developed with employers, so I'm sure Pamela will go into this in a lot more detail later, but we have tested the content of all of T-levels to make sure that that when students complete, they will have all the knowledge, skills and behaviours that they need. And a lot of the initial content was put together by employers, and then we have tested the qualifications that have been developed by awarding organisations back with those employers to make sure that the content is still correct. But Pamela will tell you a lot more about that. So as I said, it's a mixture of in the classroom and on the job, and the industry placement is a minimum of 45 days, so around 3 months. So as was mentioned in the video, not just sort of standard 2 or 3 weeks work experience, but a proper chunk of time with employers. And I think you'll hear more about that as well later on in the session. And T-levels are a mixture of practical tasks, projects and exams. And as I mentioned, we would expect the vast majority of students to move on into skilled employment, but they can also move on to further study. T-levels attract UCAS points in line with A-levels to allow students to move on to university if they want to, or they can move on into a higher level apprenticeship. T-levels have the content has purposely been made quite rigorous, much more substantial than many existing technical qualifications, again to sort of combat that view from employers that students aren't really learning enough and aren't really learning the right things. And they're a much longer teaching time. So 1 T-level is equivalent to the same number of hours that somebody might do if they did 3 A-levels. So 1 T-levels is equivalent to 3 A-levels. The course is quite broad initially, so students in their first year will do quite a broad content, and then they will choose a specialism they will do during the second year of that programme. They are based on the same employer design standards as apprenticeships, but obviously they are student is learning in a different way, but they're based on the same standards, so that if a student does an apprenticeship in a certain construction pathway and a student does a T-level in a certain construction area, they in theory come out at similar-ish points. Obviously they've learned in a different way. The T-level is broader, has broader content than the apprenticeship, but they're based on those same knowledge and skills that employers say they need in those particular occupations. So this gives you a bit more information about what I was just describing there. So a student will do a T-level qualification, and the first year of that is this broad core, and then the second year that they will specialise. It's made up of the industry placements. If the student hasn't got their GCSE English and Maths when they start their T-level, they do need to get it by the time they complete. So that can be GCSE or functional skills. So there is a bit of time in that in the timetable for them to continue studying that and to retake it before the end of the 2-year period. For some of the T-levels, there are some extra requirements, so some English and Maths, maybe not some English and Maths, some health and safety qualifications, and a couple of other things that, in specific circumstances, students will need to study to make sure that they're ready to move into work. So this slide just gives you a bit of information about which awarding bodies are developing those qualifications that I've just described, and again I'm sure Pamela will give you some more information about that. But one of the key features of T-levels, which is different to all other qualifications, is that only one awarding organisation can develop the qualification for each T-level. So for A-levels, for example, any awarding organisation can develop and deliver an A-level, and so you potentially have 3 or 4 different A-level maths on offer. And they may be all slightly different, and there has been concern in the past that having different awarding organisations developing the same qualification is that you do in the end get a bit of a drag down in quality, because obviously it's advantageous for an AO, an awarding organisation, to get more students taking their qualification, and that makes them more money. But I think that there's a concern that that means that sometimes that affects the quality. So the idea around the single awarding organisation for T-levels is there's no competition between the AOs, and we can retain that quality better.
Stella,
yeah.
Sorry, we're very, very short on time now. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I will hurry up. I've only got a couple more. Okay, so that just gives you an outline about which awardee organisations are delivering which of our first T-levels. This slide just gives you a bit more information. I clearly won't read it all out about our phased implementation of T-levels. So to make sure that our first couple of years of T-level delivery are successful, we have selected providers who are really high performing to make sure that there's really high quality and a smooth rollout in our first few years. So we've got 44 providers who've delivered T-levels from 2020, September 2020, and another 64 who will deliver from 2021, and I think about 85 in 2022. And all T-levels are expected to be rolled out by 2024. So there'll be 24 T-levels. I think this is coming up on the next slide. So there will be 24 T-levels in total in a phased 4-year rollout period. So that slide there shows you all the different areas, and the bottom left is the the 3 digital T-levels. So it's challenging introducing a new qualification into what I've already described as a very busy area. So we have done quite a lot of work over the last couple of years on communications, so focusing on students and parents and selling the benefits of T-levels to those students and parents, but also to employers as well, and you'll hear more about that later this evening. And you saw some of the video clips early on, and that those kind of materials we use online and with employer groups as well, and there's some various links on there that you can have a look at. But the communications has included a national campaign as well as lots of targeted local marketing as well around those providers who are currently delivering. And this slide just gives you just a few headlines of some of the other things that are going on in the qualifications reform context. So alongside T-levels, we're also developing a transition programme. So this is for students who aren't quite ready to start a T-level when they finish their GCSEs at 16. This gives them an extra year to get ready. So maybe they need to retake English and maths. Maybe they have a bit more they need a bit more foundation in their chosen subject before they're ready to start the T-level. So this 1-year programme will allow them to do that. I mentioned the streamlining of our huge number of qualifications earlier on in the presentation, and we are reviewing all of those qualifications at the moment, and there's a consultation out which closes next week, which proposes how we weed out some of those qualifications that have fewer progression benefits for students.
Okay, Stella, I'm really sorry, we're out of time.
That was my last slide, so that's fine.
Good, fabulous, well done. A lot of things happening, sounds great. Okay, thank you very much, Stella. Now, our next presenter is Rebecca George. So, Rebecca, over to you.
Thank you very much. Well, Stella, thank you very much. You've actually covered quite a few of the things I was going to say, so I'm going to be extremely brief. Just for those of you who don't know, as Alan said earlier, I'm the current president of the BCS. My day job is managing partner at Deloitte, and I've been chair of the T-Level Reform Programme Board for around 18 months. It's a role I really, really love. It's been fantastic being involved in the design and delivery of the T-level programme. And it's worth saying that, you know, Stella talked about how many employers have been involved with the development of these qualifications. It's also a collaborative effort inside government. So on the programme board, we have Cabinet Office, HMT, we have people from the Institute of Apprenticeships and Technical Education, but also colleagues from right across the department, and I've been really heartened by the high level of collaboration that T-levels has brought both within government and also outside. And I think it's really important. I think T-levels already marked a shift towards more collaboration by the Department for Education. And in addition to sitting on the T-level board, I'm also a member of a business advisory forum for the Secretary of State for Education. And there are a number of employers, including people like Amazon and Taylor Wimpey and Lloyd's on that business advisory forum. And the point of it is to bring the voice of business closer to education policy development. It's a really positive move. I think that even more important now with the COVID pandemic, the pandemic has unfortunately thrown into stark relief some of the inequalities in our society, and a real pressing need to ensure that young people have access to relevant and rigorous training, and training specifically to give them the digital skills that they need to thrive in a digital world. It's impossible these days to do anything really without having digital capability. So one of the great things about T-levels is it's not just the digital T-levels that have digital capability. Every single one has digital competency built in. So they're really designed, as Stella said, to get young people from the T-levels straight into employment. And the collaboration I talked about earlier, the continuation of that collaboration is going to be really important to make sure they deliver on that promise. Now, at the moment, as Stella said, these qualifications are only available to 16 to 19-year-olds, but the context that we're working in is very complicated. There is a big review of further education going on at the moment. I would be amazed if we didn't see T-levels being expanded to adults, particularly young adults, as we go forward. So I'm a fan. I'm probably biased, but I think that T-levels provide further choice for young people and should lead to a more diverse workforce. I love the fact that they were developed with input from employers. And I think it's important that all 24 T-levels incorporate digital competencies. So I'm really thrilled that you're listening to this webinar, and I urge you to get involved if you can, because collaboration is critical for the success of the T-level programme. Thank you.
Indeed it is, and that was a great précis of what we need to do, Rebecca. Thank you. Well, our next presenter is going to tell us about qualification development for digital T-levels, and that's Pamela Rahman, the Associate Director of TE Delivery and Implementation at IFATE, Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. So Pamela, over to you.
Thank you for that. So Stella's already covered essentially the structure and the policy behind T-levels. So I am going to talk specifically about the digital T-levels that we have delivered and how we went around sort of the development for that, because it is different to other reform programs, especially I think in the digital route, the importance of having employers' input into the development of the qualification and the content, given that it's such a fast-moving sector, we really wanted to make sure that it was reflective of what those employers would then want students to know once the T-level had been completed. So just in terms of the Institute's responsibilities in T-levels, so Stella's already talked about kind of industry placements and the department's role and how sort of T-levels came about. The Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education was set up a few years ago, primarily to focus on apprenticeships, and then we took on responsibility for technical education 2 years ago. And one of the first points that we were asked to deliver on were TQs, and what we do in terms of the technical qualification is we do create the outline content, and that's the basis of the qualification, and that's working with employer panels to do that. So we have panels of employers called T-level panels, and they work with institute officials on essentially what employers want to see in the qualification, so what content should be covered. The way that the content is developed is we have the core content, which is sort of a breadth of skills within the sector, and then we have an occupational specialism, which is mapped to an apprenticeship standard, which provides more depth on specific elements within that sector and for specific job roles. So once the outline content is created in collaboration with employers, there is another panel of employers that sign off that content. So we didn't want the content to be sort of just directed by a panel of employers. We wanted to make sure that it would cover the requirements of the entire sector, and that's why we have a second panel of employers that sign that content off. Once the content is signed off, we go out to tender. So awarding organisations are able to put in bids in order to take on T-level TQ contracts. So that's another responsibility of the Institute. So we go through a rigorous process for the invitation to tender and to evaluate any bids that come in to ensure that the awarding organisations will meet the service requirements and fulfil their obligations under the contracts that we hold with them. So that's both for development of the technical qualifications and also delivery. So that's once this is rolled out to schools and colleges, there are additional services that the awarding organisations provide, so to do with assessment and post-award services. Once the contracts have been signed, this gets handed over to another team that then use project management techniques on the development of the TQ. So that's taking the outline content and then turning that into a qualification with a set of assessments and projects in order for students to demonstrate their capability and also to use the knowledge and skills that they learn in the classroom. And then finally, once the TQ is developed and signed off, we move into delivery. During development of the TQ, again, we have employers involved throughout the entire process, and that's because, as I mentioned earlier, we are really keen to make sure that these qualifications fulfil the requirements for employers, but also, as Stella mentioned, they do attract UCAS points, so we also want to make sure that they are sort of rigorous enough for students to go on to higher education should they wish to do so. During TQ development, the awarding organisations work with their own set of employers. So again, we just wanted that pool to be really, really wide. We wanted as many employers as possible to be able to feed into the development of the technical qualifications. So the awarding organisations work with subject matter experts and employer panels to check and challenge their development. There are institute teams that work alongside them on this on a day-to-day basis, and there are contractual milestones throughout the year of development where the products that have been developed by the awarding organisation are submitted to the institute. They are reviewed by officials, subject experts, and then again go to an employer panel for sign-off and recommendation to our TQ board on whether or not the contractual requirements and service requirements for the TQ have been met. So those are essentially how we develop the TQ and our responsibilities within T-levels. So within the digital route, we have got 3 T-levels. They are also referred to as pathways. So in wave 1, we had the awarding organisation Pearson win the contract for production design and development. First teach for that began in September 2020, which was a huge achievement in terms of it was within the first wave of T-levels and it was the first pathway within the digital route. So that I will talk a bit more about the content within each TQ sort of broadly, so everyone has an idea of what topics are covered within those pathways. Wave 2 has just been delivered in terms of the qualification assessments have been developed and signed off by the Institute, and they have been published on NCFE's website. NCFE won the contracts for the Wave 2 digital TQs, and I should mention also that the material that Pearson developed in Wave 1 is also available on their website.
Pamela, sorry, yeah. Just 2 minutes, please. Yeah.
No problem. I don't have too much to say. So the first T-level, obviously production design and development, was mapped to the occupational standard for software development technician. So essentially this covers problem solving, programming, coding. There is a project within the occupational specialism which will vary year to year, but it will be based upon a student. An example might be they would be asked to develop an app, or they would be required to code something specific. So they are very hands-on skills that are being taught here. So they are learning to program and code themselves. They're not just learning in the classroom how one might do this theoretically, and also they will have the industry placement in which they will be able to use those skills to a further extent. The slide that you'll see here are the 2020 providers that are involved in Wave 1. Not all of these will be delivering digital, but I believe that a large portion of them are. I don't have the specific numbers here, but these are the providers involved in 2020. And then the Wave 2 digital pathways, we've got digital business services, which was mapped to the data technician occupational standard. So this covers areas within data such as cleansing data, matching, business insights, visualization. Again, the way that these are assessed are through projects and exams. So the structure of projects and exams within the TQs are the same because they're set out in our contract and service requirements, but the way that they are developed are tailored towards the occupation. So they're not just a standard set of projects and exams across all of these. They are obviously specific projects that we try to make sure that they mirror what one would do in the workplace. And again, we have the industry placements where those skills can be used further. And then finally, digital support services, where we've got the infrastructure technician, the digital support technician, and the network cabling. I've got a slide here which just gives an insight into the employers that NCFE worked with for Wave 2, and Pearson worked with their own set of employers in Wave 1. And these are the providers that are involved in First Teach for 2021. And then finally, this is the life cycle of the TQ. So again, the Institute's responsibilities for this. So I've covered outline content, development and delivery, and then post-results services. I did want to mention that we also have a mechanism for TQ changes, and that's, I think, quite important to digital. As I mentioned earlier, the sector moves very quickly, so the qualifications are reviewed every year with employers to make sure that they are up to date, and if changes are required, we have a contractual lever in there to ask the awarding organisations to update these as required. The awarding organisations also have a review process, so once a year they will also check with their employers to make sure that this is still up to date and still of the sector. So I think Darlene is going to jump in and tell me that I'm at the end of my time, so that was everything that I had to say.
Pamela, your time is up. No, fantastic. Thank you very much. So we're building up a picture of very hands-on, project-oriented, real-life situations where people can learn, can work with employers and so on. So it's an ideal time to switch over to Bev Moxon, who is an account manager at the Education and Skills Funding Agency. And Bev is going to tell us about industry placements and employers. Over to you, Bev.
Thank you very much, Dallam. So my slot, as Dallam said, is about the industry placements. I'd like to just take you through what that involves, and hopefully you're interested in getting involved with industry placements. So this is about putting into practice what the students learned in their environment in the school or college. It's to be part of the business and make a contribution. The placement is 45 days. It can be longer in some sectors, but not in digital. And the T-levels are occupationally specific, so they're very different to work experience, where the student is just being introduced to the world of work. All T-level students must complete an industry placement, and it's very important that we increase the number of employers offering industry placements over the coming years, as you've seen the rollout of the programme with 24 T-levels being delivered. There's different models for the industry placement, and it'd be for you to actually choose which one would suit you best. So you could go for one of the models, or you could do it a mix, depending on what suits you best. Things that you need to consider if you are going to offer a placement is there a best time of the year that suits you and you can offer a high quality placement? Are there any projects planned that would suit a placement? So maybe that would be more suitable to block. can you actually offer the 45 days? If not, then that can be split between 2 employers. So we are still interested if you can't offer the full 45-day placement. And in some cases, how easy is it for the student to actually get to your premises? You know, we do have some issues where students might not have access to transport as well. So there's some of the things to consider around the model itself. What would you have to offer when you put forward yourself for taking on a student? It's all about a meaningful placement. So how can the student contribute using their knowledge, skills and behaviours that they've learned in the classroom? It has to be within a safe working environment, but that will be agreed between you and the school or college before the student actually starts the placement. Any equipment the student will need to carry out the work placement. Again, this will be discussed before the student comes to your premises, and there is funding available via colleges and schools to be able to help with any costs that are incurred. It's also important to agree who in the business will mentor the student, making sure that there's no issues while they're doing the placement, and also feedback and review during and at the end of the placement. But the school or college will be in contact throughout the placement, again making sure that you are happy and the student are happy with the placement. Why would you offer an industry placement? And there are many benefits on this slide, and employers have different reasons for actually getting involved with offering industry placements, such as they want to develop their talent pipeline, or they're looking to fill skills gaps now and in the future, and some because it's the right thing for them to do. They want to offer that opportunity to a young person to be able to put their theory into practice. Over the past couple of years, employers have been involved with industry placements, so we've been trialling them since 2017, and quite a lot have actually used the industry placement to be able to raise their profile within the community, let people know what they do. And I did some work with a very large domiciliary care provider, and that was the main reason that they wanted to get involved with industry placements. They were very keen about raising their profile in the community, and it also contributed to them being able to recruit more people into their business. Industry placements, there are challenges, and along the way we've been piloting it. Employers have given us lots of feedback. So some of these are the frequently asked questions that employers are asking about. So the things around, you know, is it too much paperwork? And the question there and the answer would be, actually the college or school that you're working with, they will be able to streamline that for you. What about the students that will actually be coming on placement? You'll be involved in that recruitment process, and you will be able to work with the school and college to make sure that you are happy with that student that will be joining your workforce for that period of time. It's very important to choose a college or school for the placement that you can work with, that they're going to support you and help you with that placement and make sure you've got everything in place. As I said, they can make life a lot easier for you. They will do the paperwork. They will make sure that the compliance issues, any risk assessments are completed, and they'll be constantly there talking to you during that placement to make sure that things are going well. There's lots of support materials. Stella's touched on it, that we have a number of tools that you can have a look at online. So that would help you to understand more about the industry placements, your involvement. And also there's lots of case studies and videos of employers that have been involved in industry placements. And you can also talk to somebody about how you get more involved with that. And they will also put you in touch with people that have been in the process of industry placements and already have completed that. So I'm just doing another plug here for the industry placement website with the information in there. Or if you would like to get in touch and find out a little bit more, you can give me a call, and I'm sure at the end of the webinar the information will go up with my email address. Thank you very much. I'll hand back to Dallin.
Thank you very much, Bev. So that's been the perspective from the student's point of view. And of course, that's what all of this is aimed at ultimately. But there are lots of opportunities for you to volunteer to train somebody who is going to be training the students in the end run, at the end. So you can train the teachers. And Marion, our next speaker, is going to tell us about Industry Insights Program and current digital T-levels. Now, Marion is an employer engagement coordinator at the ETF, the Education and Training Foundation. So this is a view in terms of how you can help with the current digital T-levels. Over to you, Marion.
Okay, thank you. Here we go then. Hello everybody, and thank you for participating. My name is Marion Patterson, and I'm going to talk to you briefly about our Industry Insights programme. So I'm going to talk to you about the organisation that I work for, who are the Education Training Foundation, and our T-level programme and our T-level professional development offer, and specifically about our Industry Insights offer. I'm going to talk to you about the benefits of getting involved as an employer or an industry professional and how to get involved. So first of all, who are we? So we are the Education Training Foundation, and we're the expert body for professional development and standards in further education and training in England. And we are also the professional body for the FE sector with around 21,000 members. And we've been commissioned by the Department for Education to develop and deliver a T-level professional development offer for the FE sector delivering the T-levels. So this TLPD offer is shaped around the needs of education workforce for leaders, principals, governors, senior leadership team, teachers and trainers, and also support staff like careers advisors, for example, or industry placement officers. So it's really designed around the needs of the whole workforce at all levels. But it's also been developed alongside relevant regional, employer and curriculum requirements as well. And there are 6 elements of our professional development support that we offer to the FE sector delivering T-levels or planning to deliver T-levels. So we start with an organisational and individual training needs analysis, and we support with lots of different types of resources with understanding T-levels for all the range of staff across the sector. And we also have a professional development programme for leaders and T-level role and route specific training for individual members of staff and their roles where they are involved in T-levels, the planning and delivery of them. And we also have throughout the whole country a number of networks and trips which are T-level resource improvement projects. But the bit that I really want to talk to you about is the bit that I organise in the South West and the Midlands, and that's Industry Insights. So we heard from the previous speaker that students go out on industry placements and staff can go out on industry placements too. So we heard that for students, those placements are 315 hours or approximately 45 days, but they're much shorter for members of staff. So a member of staff in an FE environment can choose to go out on a one-day work shadowing experience and spend a day with an employer or an industry expert. Or they can spend a slightly longer period of time, 2 to 5 days. Now these placements are physical, so that may not be suitable at the moment because of the pandemic that we're in, especially in the digital industry, because so much of the digital industry at the moment is virtual and at home. But of course, we're all hoping that things will change, and we know that things will change in the future, so we will be able to get back to physical placements in the future. But I also organise employer-led industry workshops or webinars. So that's an opportunity for an employer or an industry expert to be able to spend about up to an hour with members of staff to give them an update about their industry, or to answer questions that staff have got about the industry, to share their knowledge, or maybe even give a demonstration of a work product or something that they're doing. But we're also developing a virtual placement and mentoring scheme as well, and that's going to be launched around February, March time. So that's another opportunity for you, employers or industry experts, to get involved and support the Industry Insights programme. So it's a very flexible programme, so for staff as well as for yourselves. And many employers might choose to offer one element, two elements, or all elements. So it's quite flexible, depending on how much time you have available or what really works for you or how you would like to get involved and support staff. So I think the benefits for staff, I hope, are really, really clear. It's an opportunity for them to invest in their professional development to benefit their learners, because ultimately that's what it's all about. And it helps them develop a wider understanding and appreciation of your industry and your business and organisation and your expertise. And it raises awareness of contemporary practices and technological advances in the digital industry, and helps to create a more defined line of sight for employment for their own learners. And it helps to foster long-term relationships with regional employers. But what are the benefits for you? So it helps you invest in your workforce. And it really helps you to influence how your workforce is being trained locally, and of course to address the skills gap for the future. It helps you develop relationships with local FE providers and schools, and maybe in turn they can also help you develop your business through the various programmes and funding that they may have. It helps you to strengthen and develop relationships with other local stakeholders, for example growth hubs or careers enterprise hubs. And it's an opportunity for you to facilitate a wider understanding and an appreciation of your industry and use your expertise. And of course, it enhances your reputation and business growth. So you will be a voice of influence in education. So how do you get involved? Well, again, I'm sure at the end of this webinar this evening, you'll be given some details of how you can get involved with the BCSE, who can, the British Computer Society, and they'll be able to forward your details to me, and you'll get a copy of these slides as well. And I really would say that if you're not sure what part of the programme you would like to get involved with, please don't worry. You can always get in contact with me, and we can just see what would be best suited for you and work from there. Thank you.
Great, great. Thank you very much, Marion. And now we've seen the call for action for us, that how we can help with the program by volunteering ourselves and our organizations to be part of this Train the Teachers effort in as a component of this huge overall government sponsored program. So this is all fantastic stuff, but I would now like to bring it round to BCS by having our own program director, Richard Lester, tell us some more about the opportunity and benefits for you, particularly if you're a BCS member. Over to you, Richard.
Right, hopefully you'll be able to hear me now, fingers crossed. So this is Richard Lester. I'm the program director for the technical program at BCS, and I'm really delighted to be presenting here tonight for you. So thanks very much, Dylan, and thank you very much to all the presenters. They've really said most about it. They essentially, T-levels matter. They really do, and there's such a fabulous initiative that's been introduced, this real national programme to really enhance the value of technical education, which has been the underdog for so long. And it's really important because it's all about delivering good, practical, technical capability to the industry that so dearly needs new talent and new life wherever it can get hold of it. You've seen the importance of it in the current pandemic situation. So many people are reliant on good quality technical expertise coming to practice. So a bit about what the benefits are. BCS has been involved in T-levels right from the beginning, and we've been involved in the Sainsbury panel report that was generated, the actually spawned the T-levels in the first place. We've back to it. We've been involved. I've personally been involved as well in the digital panels. I'm in the support and services panel. My background in industry for about 20 odd years before I joined BCS was mainly in infrastructure, and it was some of the best people who have worked for me and I've recruited really didn't have a qualification to the name, but I would be so pleased to employ them again. And I want them to get recognition. I want them to be valued in society, that they're hidden, they're unseen, and they need that recognition. They need to really understand that experience matters, doing something well matters. And T-levels are all about, and technical education, the way they're so dovetailed and interlinked, they all really matter hugely, that we encourage talent in whichever way we can get it. And the new initiatives that the Sainsbury Independent Panel Report generated, they're just delivering a wonderful new life into technical education, and it's to be commended. And you can be part of that. You can help it. It's all about delivering good quality technical experts into our profession. And we're got involved with Gatsby as well, Gatsby Charitable Foundation. I've been working with them for a number of years to introduce recognition for T-level students as well. We've done it with apprenticeships, we've done it with professional workers, and it's recognizing people who do. What you know is important. How you deliver that in practice is so much more important to employers. And I know people who have got great qualifications, not necessarily sure they'll be safe to put in front of a customer. Equally, there have been some people with no qualifications who are the best I've ever worked with, and I would be delighted to employ them again. So it's all about supporting. We've been supporting this because it's important to support talent wherever it arises, encourage it, develop it, give them the best life chances, not just the best life chances for them, but the best delivery to the society we serve. A bit of the next slide here is all about, I'll mention about recognition. We've got a program as part of the program that I'm delivering called Get Ahead, Get Recognised. It's about RIT Tech. I'll say a bit more about that later and saying what it is. These slides have been available, so please look at them. I'm not going to say too much, but essentially what we're doing, we're helping the delivery of T-levels by giving a dedicated student comms to the students. We're giving provider support in terms of supporting delivery of those T-levels. You've seen already there's a number of initiatives going on to help the delivery of T-levels. We're adding to that with primarily the industry insight again, giving people some expertise around professional behaviours and really giving both students and providers an extra bit of a cushion of support about how they deliver T-levels, what professional behaviours are, how they get into the world of work. And at the end of a T-level, we're saying, okay, to the student, we recognise you've made a fantastic achievement. We know you're part of the way to becoming competent. We've got RIT Tech, BCS has, that's a professional registration. It says you're competent, you're good at what you do, you're a trusted, safe pair of hands. And although they won't quite be there, they're on the journey. So we're giving them part recognition towards that. We're setting them up. We're saying you need to carry on developing. Come back when you've got some full experience and we'll give you the full professional registration. And we can give you all the benefits of BCS membership. We can help you in your career. We can help you develop. We can give you lifelong learning. BCS is such an important organisation, and this gives students an introduction to BCS, and it gives them an introduction to lifelong learning, and it gives them recognition of what they've achieved. It gives them the recognition to society and industry. All this is what we're trying to achieve with RIT Tech, and T-levels are such a great way of doing this and helping it forward, and you can help, you can be part of that. I mentioned about RIT Tech. A lot of you probably don't know what that is. It's a professional registration, and you'll see here what the founding vision is. Essentially, it says that you're competent, you're capable, and you care. You can do it. You're trusted. In our profession, it's all about trust. You need to know. You don't need to know what someone does. You need to know they can do it, and you need to know they understand the limitations of what they can do as well, and they'll be honest about what they can do, and they'll escalate when they need to. It's about ethical behaviours, professional behaviours, competence, all these wonderful combinations that make somebody, we all know them, a good, safe pair of hands. RIT Tech recognises that, and it's a limited, you have to renew your validation on time. Maybe we can do another webinar on that, or independently, Dallin, who knows. but we have aligned our T-levels to ROT Tech. We are a professional standard. We're giving them recognition once they complete a T-level, wherever they do it. We're helping the delivery of the T-levels in BCS so that we're maximising the success, and we definitely want you to be part of that. It really needs you. Rebecca has said that she urges you to be part of this, and so do I. It's so important that the T-levels that have been designed by employers, that have a significant component of their teaching on the job, to give real on the job experience, that they have to be relevant to the job as it is today, to the employers that these people will be moving on to. We need, and there's a number of ways you can get involved. You can get involved in helping the teaching of the staff, work placements there. Current work placements, I think, are probably, for the current design development, are probably pretty much filled, but there's certainly more coming on. And as these grow, then we will need more people to get involved in those. We need people to get involved in the support and services T-levels that are coming up next year, or later this year rather, and the business services T-levels. So we need people to say, give people the placements, and we can get involved and talk to us about that. You can get involved in the placements for staff and the mentoring for staff, and you can help us at BCS, help the students and help the providers delivering these T-levels in other ways as well. You can do a simple thing, just a little bit of industry insight. Can you think of a competition students might like to undertake that will give them some real insight into what is required on the job? Case studies, just a little work-related practical, not a full-blown project. That might be, we're talking about simple exercises that mean something to employers that you can do. There's some emails there. You don't need to worry about too much about which one you want to go for, but if you want to get involved in any of these things, there are opportunities for you to do so. And the previous presenters have already said what the benefits are for you, and they apply across the board. It can only be a good thing, and you're helping our country succeed. You're helping develop the talent that we so desperately need, and I'd urge you to do so. I've tried to keep it brief. It's a bit of a rattle through. I know I do talk at speed sometimes, but hopefully there'll be plenty of questions in the Q&A as well. I think I'm pretty much, have I brought us back on schedule? I think I probably have, hopefully that. But I think I'll hand back over to Delim now, and by all means, joining the Q&A.
Great, thank you very much, Richard. You brought it around full circle in the best in the best Michael Palin tradition. So now for you can see how you can be involved. And as Richard has eloquently put it, you can help T-levels, you can help BCS, you can help the UK, and I have to extend it, and you can help the world. So let's go for it. This is really a fantastic initiative. But now it's your turn. So I'm going to hand you over to my colleague, David Grundy, because he's a man with a furrowed brow. He's been collecting questions, your questions. David, do you have some questions for us to put to the panel?
Yes, I do. Some of them have been answered already, so I will choose a few. So the first question is from Dave. What models do we use to get an overview of how these qualifications lead into other qualifications? Is there a map into English level 4 qualifications?
Is that one for me? I think.
Well, who would like to take that on? Pamela's got a broad smile, so I guess it's yours, Pamela.
I'm happy for Stella to jump in, as I think she was in there first. But we do.
Okay, we've got that ball passing around.
And then I'll hand the second part to Stella. So on the occupations and the standards, there was a lot of work done since at the beginning when the institute was established. So we do have a set of occupational maps for each route, and that will show you the different levels and where they map to, and the levels that we have are included on that. And then Stella, I'll probably hand over to you on the English point.
So I was really just going to talk about the maps as well, but I mean on English and maths, where there are qualifications that have sort of significant math content, we have obviously looked at existing license to practice and requirements for maths, and make sure that the appropriate level of maths and English and digital is built into T-levels where it's relevant. And I think all T-levels are required to have a basic level of maths, English and digital included in them anyway. Richard, I don't know whether or not there's anything you want to add from your experience with the panel process.
The ubiquitous take myself off mute, sorry about that. I think yes, I don't disagree with that. I think that the key thing about T-levels is that they, certainly in experiential stuff, it's important that the maths and English, it almost is like you need maths and English, but in an applied sense, and it's making sure that the right level of English and maths is delivered to that level of that you need to do the job. It's all about preparing someone for an occupation. When you finish a T-level, you're supposed to be at the same threshold level of competence that you would be from doing the equivalent apprenticeship. I've been quite involved in apprenticeships as well, and it's so it's a lot of English and maths is going to be irrelevant, but you need to have a certain capability to be able to perform your job, and a lot of that can be implied rather than through theory. And so we were conscious of that, but we didn't certainly in terms of the development of the outline content, we didn't get too bogged down in the English and maths, but we were trying to be mindful of how we could develop some of that theory and teaching as we develop the content as well. Do you agree with that, Stella? Does that give a fair representation?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right, and I definitely agree with the applied element, and you know, that is what T-levels are all about, as you said, is making sure that students can move into work. It's not all about the sort of the theory that they would get through academic qualifications. So yeah, agree entirely. Thank you.
Great,
Okay,
thank you, David.
Okay, the next question, can we just confirm, is this UK-wide or just England at the moment?
It's just England at the moment.
Okay.
We have had discussions with the devolved administrations, but there are some sort of legal complications, so for now it's just England.
Okay, the next question is for Rebecca from Paul. He says, I'm not clear how T-levels will address the inequalities that have been brought a stark relief by the pandemic. Can you clarify how students from poorer backgrounds are able to access this?
Great question, and no, I can't clarify, not completely. I think what you have to do is you have to think about the T-level programme in the wider context of reform that's going on across education and FE at the moment, and in the context of the government's levelling up programme. T-levels in and of themselves offer, I think, a unique opportunity to all young people, regardless of their background and regardless of their location in England, to get a really, really good education that will fit them for employment in the area in which they live. But clearly, you have to have employers in those areas who are able to offer the work placements and also offer the jobs going forward. So for me, the other side of the coin here is what are the discussions that are going on around the industrial strategy, and how are we gripping the opportunities which are considerable, which have emerged out of the pandemic, in order to build the pipeline of skills that we need for the job opportunities which indubitably will come in the future. So no, T-levels are not the answer in and of themselves, but I think they're an absolutely critical building block. I don't know whether any of the other panelists would like to pick up on that point as well.
I think if I might come in, I'd say yes. You're absolutely right, Rebecca. It's not a silver bullet, but what it does, and the whole expansive revisions that have come in through after the Sainsbury panel report, was that it's raising the parity of esteem between technical education against academic education, and it's moving away from the thought that you have to achieve academic excellence to succeed, and you don't, and you shouldn't. You shouldn't be written off because you can't take exams. You have talents, and we can nurture that and develop it and recognize it as being the equivalent value. You can do the job, that's great, that's what employers need. There's nothing wrong with academic education. It's absolutely excellent, and it gives us some fantastic people, but it's not the only way to succeed. And technical education is absolutely vital, and it's just wonderful to see the fact that this recognition as the pennies dropped, and we are developing the parity of esteem. It's not there. It will it will develop over time, but this is the way. Certainly T-levels are a significant part of that picture.
I think that's a really good point, Richard, and also it allows opportunities for young people who maybe had not thought about going into a higher level apprenticeship, or maybe hadn't considered going on to university, who don't want to necessarily take A-levels or a very formal academic qualification. What's great about this qualification is that it can leave those options open to them. So when they finish the qualification, they can go into employment, they can go into an apprenticeship, or they can go on to university. So it's really widening participation for a whole tranche of students, a whole group of students who may never before had considered the opportunity of studying at a higher level if that's what they want to do. But in addition to that, there are also T-level transition programs as well, which are a little bit like a precursor to T-levels. So if there are students who, for one reason or another, feel that the T-level itself is too big a step for them academically, they can enrol on a T-level transition program prior to that to get themselves ready. So it's a really wonderful opportunity for all students, regardless of their economic or social background, to be able to go as far as their skills and talents will allow them to go.
And I was just going to make a very basic practical point that our expectation is the majority of T-levels will be available across the country. So it shouldn't be a question of sort of pockets of providers in certain parts of the country offering a few of the T-levels. The expectation is that, yeah, that they will be available everywhere. So all students should be able to access them.
That's great. Bev, I know we can't see you, but would you like to add something from the students' perspective? Have you been picking up appreciative comments from students?
I think and endorse what the panelists have said, that it does give students that opportunity to be able to access education at that technical level. So as Richard was saying, you know, academic education is excellent, but for some students it's not always the way that they want to learn. So it just offers them that extra opportunity to be able to go on to higher education or go into the workplace as well. So I think as we see T-levels rolling out, it will become a very popular choice for students.
Great, thank you. Back to you, David.
Okay, the next question is for Pamela. Are the companies on the employer panel funding the students, thinking about those who are not able to afford this pathway?
So the employers are not funding the students, but there has been funding from the department kind of put into the programme to establish this. So one of those things are making sure that the providers that are delivering the digital T-levels are equipped to do so. So there was funding available for those providers, and also the funding for the providers in terms of the students that they have taken on board. That's done through the normal mechanisms as it is done for any qualifications offered at schools and colleges. So it's not the employers, but as Stella mentioned, this will be available across England. So in terms of the providers that have been involved in 2020 and 2021, there was an expression of interest sent out to all providers that were eligible to do that. So it wasn't concentrated in one area of the country, and it's not just for providers that, you know, are already equipped and set up to do digital qualifications. There was funding available to help them get ready for T-levels.
In terms of, I mean, there isn't sort of funding available for students to do a T-level. It's a level 3 college-based qualification like BTECs or A-levels. There is a recognition that it might be difficult for some students to travel to their industry placement. So in some parts of the country, there is you know, a difficulty of access to, for example, digital employers. I went to Boston last year, and they're quite out in the middle of nowhere, and they were, you know, having challenges in finding digital employers. And we have put more funding into the student bursary fund to help students travel further afield to get to those placements. So we are looking at ways that we can support students to make sure that they can access their placements.
Okay, great. The next question is for Pamela again. What is the expected success rate of students going through these pathways, i.e. what success criteria is being applied to the scheme?
So in terms of the data and the success rates, so these are graded, so they're graded qualifications. The student would be expected to come out with a pass or a distinction. The different elements of the T-level are graded slightly differently, but you can find that on our website. All of the information for the grading is on there. But essentially, it's done as it is in other qualifications. Because we've not had the first wave of students complete the programme yet, they started in September 2020, we don't have any existing data for T-levels. So we don't have that available, but what we are doing is we are working with ESFA and the department. They've got field forces in place with the providers, and they are looking at supporting them through delivery. So again, making sure that everything is accessible to the students, especially during this COVID time as well. So just so people are aware, there are contingencies and support in place, because we know we are in a different environment for the first rollout of these, and all of the data that we gather over the next year or so will give us those insights, and then we will be in a position to be able to share some of that.
I think it's also useful to, as a reminder, that T-levels are a programme and not just a qualification. So for a student to be able to complete their T-level, they do need to complete their qualification, and they'll get, as Pamela said, they'll get a grade for the core and they'll get a grade for their specialism that are quite different. But they have to complete their industry placement, and it has to be an industry placement that's relevant to their specialism, and they have to complete the full length of time. And like I said at the beginning, they have to have level 2 English and maths. So unless they get those 3 elements, they don't get their T-level. And each of those 3 elements will be detailed separately on their T-level qualification, so employers can see what they've got in their core, what the learning outcomes were that they achieved in their placement, that kind of thing. So it's a whole programme rather than just the qualification.
Okay, the next question. One aspect that was not addressed is explaining T-levels to parents, as they are often a strong influence in what education and careers young adults pursue.
Yeah, so I mentioned in my slides the communications campaign, and we have a number of different elements to that campaign, and one element is specifically focused on parents. We're acutely aware that students are very influenced by their parents and the choices that they make. And we have worked with a number of focus groups to help us really hone our communications materials around the concerns and the questions that parents might have. One of the biggest concerns is around sort of closing down options, and this idea that if a student chooses a T-level and they choose their specialism in, I don't know, the example that's always used is there's a specialism in air conditioning or something like that, and that's always the example that's used. There aren't that many 15-year-olds who think I want to work in air conditioning, but so it's about making sure that they understand, that the parents understand the full breadth of the T-level, not just the specialism, and all of those different progression routes that students can take. So it really isn't narrowing down their choices, and they still have lots of options available. So yeah, we've been quite careful at targeting our different communications activity depending on our audience.
And I think it's important as well that the parents, you're absolutely right what you're saying there, Stella, but I think once parents start to see that this is valuable to employers, that it is a real significant achievement. This is no mean feat. 3 A-levels equivalent. It's a really serious qualification, and as you say, you can develop and go to universities, and it's designed by employers for employers. Once parents start to see that it does have a value to employers and that people are getting jobs off it, they're moving on, they're developing, I think that's likely to be the turning point. But again, it's not something they're going to get now, because it is different to what's gone before.
Yeah, and exactly, and we're definitely building up sort of libraries of case studies. So our existing students, some of them are becoming T-level student ambassadors for us, and so to help us with our communications, to tell other students what it's really like on a T-level course. And so I think you're right. Once we have students that have been through the process and we can demonstrate that they've moved on to good jobs or good next steps, it will help enormously.
Okay, the next question. Is there an effort to push some of the ideas, content and principles down into IT GCSEs so that the students are well prepared for the T-level?
I don't think that is currently part of the thinking in the department at the moment. So this sort of raft of reforms are definitely focused at post 16 for now. I certainly wouldn't want to comment on sort of GCSE digital at the moment.
Okay.
David, do you have many more questions left?
Just another two, around two,
Good.
I think.
Let's go for it.
Okay, so are these T levels available to older learners, and how do they go about doing them?
So at the moment they are 16 to 19 only. We are looking at how we can expand them to older learners as well, to adult learners. There are quite a lot of things to consider. So there aren't too many adults who can spend 4 days a week in college. And we need to think about, you know, how can we recognise prior learning? How can we recognise prior work experience? So it is definitely something that we are thinking about, and there is an expectation that they'll be available at some point in the future for adults.
Okay, is there a minimum time commitment if you're considering supporting teachers in gaining industry insights?
I think that's probably one for me, isn't it? So as I explained, the programme is really flexible. So I guess the sort of shortest amount of time would be to offer to deliver a webinar on a topic of choice of either your own, something you'd really like to communicate to the FE sector, or maybe it could be that I've got a topic in mind from participants and staff that I've been speaking to, and that I could find somebody who could deliver that. So that's really only a 1 hour commitment, and then it moves into a commitment of a day to take a member of staff for a work shadowing day, or a virtual placement, which is a few hours spread over a few weeks, but the equivalent of a day. And then further on from there, if you wanted to commit further, then there would be the commitment of 2, 3 or 4 days. But you know, people can really shape the Industry Insights programme to support staff in the way that they want to. So you don't have to kind of continue to offer placements sort of again and again and again. You might just like to take one teacher to help them with one aspect of something they're interested in, or become a mentor, which only involves a 1 hour conversation once a month for a few months. So we can really work together to find what works best for you, because we don't want people to feel overcommitted, and we don't want that to be a barrier to participation. So we'll work with you with whatever you can offer.
Okay, great. So the English and maths part of the T levels, is there any practical experience with things like technical documentation and building knowledge bases and that sort of thing?
Yep, so I think someone mentioned it earlier, it may have been Richard. So there is English, Maths and Digital competencies built into the qualifications. So there are, so essentially when we're working with the awarding organisations to further develop this from the outline content, there are ways in which when we get to the assessment, the Maths and English skills relevant to that level, so at level 3, are assessed and are part of that assessment, but they're not kind of separate, discrete elements. So they won't have an English test or a maths test. It's kind of built in to the qualification. There is an exit requirement of English and maths. So in terms of the practical skills and how that's embedded, so in the digital qualifications, the way that the English is embedded is relevant to this sector. So it won't be, again, something that stands out and is like an English language test or, you know, an English literature test. It will be built into the questions that are relevant to digital, or the assessment style that is relevant to digital.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we've got one last question, and this is for Richard. Ian says, regardless of the academic components, an industry placement could be a successful demonstration of practice and therefore fit in with the initial levels of SFIA. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So Sophia, for those who don't know, Skills Framework for the Information Age, international framework that BCS uses a lot, and indeed international framework that is used to understand people's skills at certain levels. So thing about Sophia, it's very much a case of about skills demonstrating what you do rather than what you know. So we broadly, I would think, T-levels are more or less aligned to Sophia level 2. By the time you finish a T-level, you are almost at the threshold of Sophia level 3, which is doing. So I suppose the short answer is yes, it's probably aligned to Sophia level 2. By the time you have come out of and you demonstrate your experience from a T-level, you're probably going to be starting to operate around Sophia level 3. I hope that answers your question. I've understood it properly, but if not, by all means get in touch and I'll talk some more.
Great. Thank you very much, Richard. David, do we have any more questions?
No, I think we're done now.
That sounds fantastic. Okay, I want to wrap this up a little bit by doing two things. Number one, Marion, a lot of the initiative behind this particular session was yours. Now, how can we help? Just tell us the pathway to us offering to help you. And the easy route, in my view, is to offer to help the teachers, let's say one teacher, rather than offer to help each of the 30 students. But how can we do that? What's the process?
Yeah, so the process is really either to get in touch with me directly and we can discuss the options and what would work for you and what your time commitments are and what part of the programme you'd like to get involved with. So I think you're going to be giving my details out as part of my presentation. Is that right, Dallin?
Yes.
Yeah, or they can get in touch with you, I believe, and if they have an interest, and you can put them in touch with me, and then I'll contact you. We'll discuss your options. We'll look at where you are in the country as well and what part of the digital industry you're involved with, what you think you've got to offer, and then I'll have a look through all of my candidates, all of the FE staff sector who are applying for placements, and we'll try and match you up with the right person for the right part of the programme. So it really is just get in touch. It's that easy. And even if you're just at the stage where you're just thinking about it, you're not sure, you don't really want to commit, you just want to find out more, that's absolutely fine.
I'd also like to say, Dallin, that if anyone is interested in offering an industry placement, I've just taken the opportunity to make a pitch, Marion, that they can get in touch with me.
Well, it works together, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it works. It works both ways, because somebody might have already offered placements for students through yourself, and then might think, actually, now I could offer a placement for a member of staff, or they might offer placements for a member of staff and then think, well, actually, maybe I could take some students now. I've kind of dipped my toe in the water and I see actually it's quite easy to take students now.
Yeah, so our first digital T-level launched in 2020 and the next two are coming on stream really soon. So any willing employers for placements would be brilliant.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Well, T-levels are huge. This is my recollection from our session today, and they're very, very worthwhile. And it sounds really worth getting some participating in this. And Richard has shown that BCS has been involved in T-levels for quite a long time. Marion has shown how you can offer to teacher or other staff type person. Pamela has shown the aspects relating to qualifications and development of those. Bev has shown how industry placements and students interface with each other. And of course, we've had Stella giving us the overview of this great program. Fantastic.